Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. I'm your host, Seb Fry, and today's guest is Gail Behrend, the author of Energy is Real, a practical guide to understanding and managing personal energy in everyday life. Gail's work is built around a simple but powerful idea. Our energy is not just some vague concept. It affects how we feel, how we respond to stress, how we heal, and how we connect with other people. In an earlier life, Gail was a mechanical engineer, but a powerful energy experience in the 1980s opened her spirit to the belief that energy is real, connects us all, and is the driving force for quality of life. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Gail, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm very excited to have you here to talk about energy and healing and all of that. But for people who aren't yet familiar with you, could you maybe take a minute or two and tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, who is Gail Behrend and what are you all about?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I'm a person who started out as very non-spiritual, woo-phobic. I was actually a woman engineer back when that was unusual. There are a lot more now, but when I was there in that profession, I was usually the only one in the entire company. And so that gave me an interesting 20-year career. And I was very, very closed to anything more than the material world scientific view and that sort of thing. So some of your listeners may relate to that. And it wasn't until I actually had an experience that revealed to me there was more to this reality than I realized. And I won't go into details of that unless you want to follow it, but it transformed my worldview and allowed me to expand for more possibilities, not only for our health and happiness but also who we really are, more than our bodies, that there's more to us than our bodies, and that the part that's more to us is invisible. It's you can't see your thoughts, right? You can't see your emotions, although you can reflect them in your expression and that sort of thing. The actual experience of your own emotions is private, and so I call all of these invisible yet tangible to us aspects of our being, and also things like personal space. If somebody feels too close to you, that's a private experience, right? I mean, it's who says what's too close, but you have your own feelings of comfort or discomfort depending on your upbringing and that sort of thing in your culture. And you can, even though somebody's not doing anything, they may just be sitting on the bus near you or on a bench near you, but it feels invasive. And so these subtle experiences, which most people can relate to when you talk about it in those terms, say, yeah, I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like when someone's sitting too close and I want them to back off. Back off, buddy. Or in conversation when they're really talking in your face. We all know what those experiences are, but we can't really name it. And in our culture, it really doesn't acknowledge that aspect of our being. And I call that aspect the invisible aspect, but very real aspect of our being, our energy. And it affects our physical experience and our well-being and that sort of thing. And it includes the spiritual. And when I talk about the spiritual, I'm thinking about our dreams, our conscience, our sense of hope and optimism. All those aren't just thoughts. Those are actual, and they're not just emotions. They're actually at a higher state of being, a sense of connection with something greater than ourselves. So for those who are spiritual, they know what that means. And for me, at that early stage, I didn't have any of that. I was an agnostic. But I did have, the closest thing I came to as a spiritual experience was being in nature. And so, that experience, the exhilaration you feel on a mountaintop looking over, I ski, so looking out over the snowy mountaintops below and that sort of thing. Or sailing with the wind rushing by and you're just on wind power. I mean, that's thrilling. And also even just going for a walk in a blizzard. It can be exciting and exhilarating, and that is an energy that's another form of energy, because it's an experience, if you like. It's not a physical one. I mean, it's experienced physically as almost like tingles or excitement, but it is also part of our spiritual being. So it's more than emotions, it's more than touch, and it's more than thoughts. It's an experience. It's that ineffable experience. Others will feel that in a church or ancient cathedral or something like that, or an old growth forest, right? The same sense of the sacred or something powerful
Or at Machu
and
Picchu.
important. Oh yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I've never been there, but I'd love to. So, so that's what I mean about energy, is those non-tangible in terms of physical measurement and that sort of thing, aspects of our being, but they're very real to us and important to us. And they affect our physical health and our well-being and our view on life. And so I'm passionate. Once I started learning about this, and then I learned, I was actually trying to heal a broken heart. So my triggering experience was a traumatic breakup back in my 30s, which triggered a deep spiral of grief and despair and that sort of thing. And I didn't have any tools to manage it, so I went in to that state, and it was basically I came to the place after negative spiraling where I felt that my life wasn't worth living. And as I was in that place, feeling like there was no future for me, and all I had fallen off a cliff with the end of the relationship and all that, I suddenly had an experience out of nowhere of, and you remember I was an agnostic, with no spiritual context at all in my life, a sudden experience of infinite love pouring down through my crown and I even heard words which said, "But I love you." And it was like mind-blowing to this little engineer, and I felt like every cell of my body was being flooded with this incredible love, and I was tangible, it was tingling, and I could feel it coursing through my body, and I went into this more altered state where it's like my sense of place or sense of the world had expanded, and in that experience, it felt very, very real. And in fact, that's the name of my book, Energy is Real, because of that experience. And then, of course, being an engineer, I had to figure it out. What was that? Because I had no frame of reference to fit it into my neat, ordered, left-brain, logical, materialistic world. I didn't have any God in that world. I didn't have any, like, whoa, what was that? And so that led me to becoming a seeker. And it took a long time. But nevertheless, my mind had been cracked open by that experience, and a bit like a near-death experience. You've probably heard about those, and there are people who who die on the operating table, but they come back, and so it changes your worldview. And so I didn't actually die, but it certainly changed my worldview. And opened me up to this whole concept. So what's this big more that exists in our reality?
So is this the energy experience that you started out with, that you mentioned at the beginning of the show that this we're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Great. So, but before I go to that, I used to be a software engineer. What kind of engineer were you?
I was a controls engineer, control systems engineer. So I was
Like for Johnson Controls, somebody like that.
Actually, it was more. It could have been Johnson Controls or Honeywell and that sort of thing. And my specialty was process control. So the clients that I worked with were oil companies and that sort of thing. They had very complex control schemes and that sort of thing for creating gasoline and that sort of thing. So my degree was in mechanical engineering, but this was one of the sort of subdivisions or minors that came with it. You could go aeronautical, you could go nuclear, and I went automation and controls.
Right. And what year was it that you were in the automation and control engineering business? You said 20 years. What years were those 20 years?
I graduated in 74.
Until 94 then.
Until 94. And then I didn't quite give up on the technical side. I just changed to training and documentation, technical training and documentation. So I was training operators then. instead of developing new systems in their thing.
Okay. All right, cool. And so now this spiritual experience that you had, this energy experience that you had, what year was that?
I can't remember what it was. Probably it happened in, I think, 85,
Oh, a long
1985.
time ago. Like we're talking 40 plus years ago.
Yeah,
All right, so that's kind of in the middle of your being an
that was.
engineer.
I was in the middle of being an engineer. I didn't leave my engineering profession until 94. So yeah, it happened around 80. It was around 85, I think, that it happened. And we had been in relationship for 4 years, and so that was at the end of those 4 years when it all went south. And so I was very ingrained in my engineering career, my identity, wrapped up in that as well. And I loved it. I loved being an engineer. It was so much fun and so creative. Well, if you already been one, you know how exciting it could be to actually design something and have it made real. It's thrilling when your
Well,
design
you actually
actually
made things
works.
real. I made things out of code that just existed on a computer screen for the most
But
part, right? I mean,
you would see the result, right? You
you
would
would see
have
the result.
users and that sort of
Yes,
thing.
that's right.
In
Yeah.
my case, I actually saw tangible, real things. So control valves and controllers and control rooms, and I was designing those systems, and uh, and and I was designing them on paper first, right? And I also had to work with other engineers of different disciplines. So engineering really is a team sport, and so I wasn't a process engineer, so I didn't know the intricacies of chemical processing, but I had to understand it to be able to control it. And so there was a lot of communication with the other engineers in the teams, and similarly the guys who did design the tanks and the process vessels and that sort of thing. I had to know where my instruments were going and what they were measuring and what were some of the specifications they had to meet. They had to be able to handle these temperatures and pressures, and so it required a lot of deep collaboration with my fellow engineers. But I was the one who actually got the controls to work and designed the control rooms. So if you can imagine something that looks like the bridge on Star Trek, with
Right.
these racks of TV monitors and that sort of thing, and then operators sitting in front of them, and they're making adjustments there. Well, that's what the control rooms looked like, and I was designing the control rooms as well as the instrument actual individual loops from control valve to transmitter all the way back to the control room, and then how it was configured on those monitors. So it was quite a fun job.
That sounds cool. That sounds really cool, actually. But so there you are, and you're designing control rooms and control valves and all this in a very highly technical field. And then you had this energy experience. And so were you at work, or were you just chill out on the couch watching TV on a Sunday afternoon, or like how did it hit you?
Oh, it hit. I was at home when that happened because I was ultimately emotionally devastated by the breakup. This is the one. This is the person who was the one in my heart. And so when it turned out he wasn't, uh, and there was a betrayal type thing, it rocked my world. It was like heartbreaking, and I had absolutely no psychological skills. I was not emotionally intelligent at that time. It took me decades to learn how to do that, but at that time I was helpless, and I just fell in to that devastation, and so I didn't know what else to do, and I couldn't help myself. So I ended up that I wouldn't have done at work. That I would definitely have, I was able to put on a brave face at work, but as soon as I would get home, as I was approaching my home, the tears would start flowing, and then I would just be falling into my emotions, and I really didn't know how to deal with them. I had to, and it was during one of the when I really hit the bottom of. I always liken it like my nice, neat, ordered world fell off a cliff, and I fell in after it. And when I finally hit bottom, it was like I splatted. And that's when this miraculous experience happened. And I had to, whoa, what was that? Because I had totally no frame of reference for it. So I had to start from scratch. But it was real. It felt tangible. I couldn't deny it. I couldn't measure it, but I could experience it. And it was a very real experience. So that triggered my searching, which in those days there was no internet. And so it was books. You had to go to books. And so books, remember those?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have some books, and once in a while I do pick them up. But I'm interested about this experience because you said like it felt so real, right? And
Yes.
but you've also talked about like like emotions are energy too. But like I think a scientist would say like emotions are just like hormones essentially, right? I mean, like what you felt was probably like
Yeah.
a hormone, a rush of hormones
Yeah, yeah,
triggered
yeah.
by blah blah blah. So what do you say to that?
Well, those thoughts went through my head too, right? But eventually I learned how, being a controls engineer, we deal with things called transducers, which transform a signal from one type of energy to another. So if I'm measuring pressure, I can't just carry that pressure to the control room, which might be a mile away. And I have to transmit it somehow. I have to get the reading locally, and then I have to transmit it, convert it to an electrical signal or a digital signal, and then it can be transmitted a mile away to a control room and then displayed on a screen. So transducers are an important part of controls. So fortunately I had that background because eventually in my searching I came up with the idea, and I was able to sort of validate that in my healing practice later, but that our brain is like a massive onboard computer and it is a big transducer. So our emotions, pure, the raw signal, are happening in our energy field, and then the brain transmits and translates that into chemical signals in the body, which gives us our physical response to those emotions, right? The sweat, the shivers, or the hairs standing up on end, and all the other things. But the actual emotion itself is driving the brain to produce the neurochemicals, which then give us symptoms of an emotion. And so I wouldn't have got that if I hadn't been a controls engineer, but it was like, okay, now it makes sense, because our emotions nobody's walking around measuring our emotions except we can feel them. But if you think of the neurochemicals and the hormones are triggered by neurochemicals too as well, as the result of the emotion rather than the cause of the emotion. And so the emotion is caused by other things. For example, events, our thoughts, how we interpret those events. Is this a threat? Is this something nice? Is this something I have to fight back? Those are happening at the thought level and also at the belief level, depending on how you were programmed as a child, right? Depending on if you had a traumatic childhood, you're going to be more alert to danger than if you had an easy childhood. And so the interpretation of danger isn't actually happening in the brain. It's happening in your thoughts and in your beliefs. So the beliefs are kind of the filter for taking the data that's coming through your physical eyes, ears, and all of that stuff and transforming it into, what does this mean? And so that's what perception is you've got the sensing part, which is neutral. It's like, okay, I'm getting light photons hitting the back of my retina. That's triggering an electrical signal to the brain, right? That's neutral. It doesn't have any interpretation of it. It's just light, right? Light patterns. But our response to it is happening in the energy field, where it's looking at it and comparing it to past experiences and deciding, is this good or bad? Is this something I need to act on? That sort of thing. And it goes really subtle into nuances in relationship, right? When somebody says something and it's their tone of voice, right, makes you think, this guy's judging me, or he thinks I'm a jerk or I'm stupid, right? People make those conclusions all the time. If they were treated as if they were stupid as children, that's a wound, and that will be stored in the energy field as a little belief. People think I'm stupid. It may not be true that they're thinking that at all. We don't know. We can't read their thoughts, but that their tone of voice, their movements, are interpreted by our consciousness as, oh, I know what this is. This person thinks I'm stupid. It's not necessarily true. And we'll be associating, our consciousness makes associations with things. So if, for example, as a kid, you were bullied by a big, powerful blonde kid, then you're going to store, these are conclusions drawn by a little child, right? Not adult conclusions, that beware big, strong, blonde people because they can hurt you. I mean, and then you go and get a job and your boss is a big, strong, blonde person. You're going to start projecting that nervousness around him and not know why, because it's so old. It's so, from such a young age. It is actually part of your filter system now, and you start getting alert, warning, warning. And that's not happening in the brain. It's happening in your consciousness, which is the energy aspect of you, and then the brain's reacting to that. So as soon as you discern in your consciousness that it's a threat, then the brain generates the threat hormones, and gets you ready to fight or run away or whatever. So that's my theory, and it works for me. And by that I mean it gives me the results I expect. And part of my training, when I eventually did become an energy healer, was all about the consciousness, human consciousness, and how it evolves from infancy to adulthood, and how we're not capable of certain conclusions or understanding things until we get to a certain age. And so when things happen to a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, they're going to be interpreting it from that perspective. And then if it was frightening or traumatic, they don't know how to handle it. They're not developed yet to handle it.
Right. Well, one question I had is, when you talk about this, like you said, you heard a voice tell you that you are loved when you had that. So, like, what was that? Was it the voice of God? What do you think that was? Where did that voice come from? Well, what do you think now, many years later, 40 years down the road?
Well, I ended up in my seeking, and I didn't want anything to just. I was reluctant to go to a church because I had beliefs and about churches, and I had a lot of I was a feminist and all that sort of thing at that time, and I wasn't too thrilled with how churches had treated women, and over the centuries, and so I didn't trust organized religion. I did trust spirit, but I didn't have any framework to work with it at that point. So I didn't know what it was. It felt vast. It didn't feel like a parent's voice or anything like. It was way different from my human experiences, because it felt cosmic in scale, and I didn't know what it was, but it felt vast. And at the same time, it was this strange paradox of this sense of being held by something way bigger than me, and at the same time that it knew me as not just a mote of dust, but as something that it knew, like it knew my history and all that. And that was the bizarre part. How does this, whatever it is, know me and understand where I'm coming from, and is able to give me the exact energy that I needed to come out of this depth of despair and grief and suicidal thoughts suddenly when I was least expecting help. I had given up on getting help, and it suddenly appeared, and so I had to find out what it was, because I didn't have a frame of reference for it. So I shared my experience with a few friends that were more open about reality, and they then recommended books that would slowly reveal to me how reality works, including the spiritual aspect of consciousness. And so I was like, I got an education. The books were books I would never have opened before. They were channeled. And that would have been just too weird for me, right? No way, I'm not reading something that stupid. Are you kidding? But because I now was broken open, whatever it was isn't explained by my reality. So what was that? And so I was, led to books on near-death experiences. I was led to books on life, believe it or not, like past and parallel lives, written by psychologists that were regressing someone they had hoped to regress them to infancy or even in the womb to access some old programming, and they regressed them too far accidentally. And so the client was now experiencing life before this life. And so it was like they were getting ready to be conceived. And so that got them curious, and then they started doing, more deliberate experiments and wrote books on it. So that was intriguing. And then one of the books, so those weren't channeled, but the one that I mentioned that was channeled was called The Seth Material. And there was this journalist in the 70s, Jane Roberts, who was, she was an investigative journalist, and she was curious about the phenomena of psychic phenomena and stuff like that. And she was experimenting with what they call Ouija boards. Have you heard of those? They're like
Sure.
little...
Of course.
So it's a play that people play with that, and they try and spell out a message from the divine or whatever. And so in one of her experiments, which she did with some friends, she began to hear the message before it actually got spelled out. And that was a bit weird for her. And then, so she mentioned that to her husband, and they began experimenting on their own. And she would just share what came. And it was a lot faster than spelling it out letter by letter. And he would write it down. And the entity that they had contacted was called Seth, and it was like a guide type entity, multidimensional in nature, and it was talking about the nature of personal reality. So not the usual stuff about your uncle who passed over, but actually about this, talking about the behind the scenes mechanism of what's going on with consciousness, and so. And then he talked about things like parallel reality. We talk about past lives and stuff, but this is parallel lives. So your consciousness is way bigger than what we think. It's way bigger than what fits into a human body.
The multiverse.
Exactly. And it was saying that when we're making decisions all the time, and the decisions we don't take, another aspect of our consciousness is taking that one to see what happens. And so it's like we're having a multiversal experience, but we're not aware of what the other aspects of our being are exploring. So
that is so interesting to me because like I believe in the multiverse. I mean, as much as I believe in anything, which is to say, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say. Like I'm a skeptic, I guess you would say, but like okay, the multiverse, I believe in it. And like anytime that you're in a situation where like you feel like you're failing or it's not going according to plan or you wish there had been a different outcome or there would be a different outcome, just say, well, in the multiverse, the same thing is happening somewhere else, but in that other reality, you're actually succeeding. It's going your way. Like what is different in that multiverse than right now? And like, why can't you do that exact same thing in that multiverse? Because really the number of possibilities is completely unlimited. So I'm going to read that book. I'm going to download it. I'm going to find it. I'm not going to read it because I don't read anything, but I'm going to try and get that book, The Seth Material. That sounds very interesting to me. But I have so many questions here that I've been writing down here. I want to get to them. And but we're going to go back. We're going to go all the way back again to that experience that you had because it made me ask. You were in a very low energy state, right? And I think that a lot of our viewers have experienced that. Some of them probably are in low energy states perpetually, right? And so, like, is there any mechanism that you can use to get out of a low energy state into a high energy state, like that's reliable?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I in fact, one of the first things you can do is a breathing, and like it actually affects your physiology. And so especially if you had some sort of trauma in childhood, then that makes you hypersensitive to things that could be threats. And then when you get into that state, you could be highly depressed and not know how to get out of it. When you get into that state, it feels like there's no hope. And so one of the things you can do, what is considered a high energy state is a state of gratitude or love. that affects your physiology. So if you're able to generate a memory or an experience in your imagination of love or gratitude, it will actually have an impact on your body, because the body doesn't really know the difference between real and imagined. Just like when we're dreaming, right? We think that an axe murderer is chasing us. Our legs are twitching and we're sweating and our heart rate's going up, even though that's a dream. It's not actually real. And so our brain is responding to the imagined scenario. So similarly, we can change use our imagination now as a tool to change our physical state. And so there's a resource that I find very helpful, and many people, especially useful for people who've had traumatic experiences. And what they do is it's a very easy thing to do in seconds. And you put your hands on your heart and you're breathing through your heart. And just the act of doing that is already calming, because now you're actually instructing your body to breathe more slowly, which is one of the things that triggers the relaxation response in the physiology, right? Oh, the danger's over. I can breathe now. And that already starts changing the physiology. But then they add thinking about things you're grateful for. And so that's a higher frequency. And it's like shining the light in a dark room. And so while you're breathing through like 4 slow breaths through your heart, then you think about something you're deeply grateful for. And what I like to do is I like to take it, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I like to take it more slowly so that you're breathing that, first of all, that warmth from your own hands that are sitting on your chest. And as with every breath, allowing that to go in deeper and to soften your heart and to breathe it in and up and down your body, that warmth. Already just being able to breathe and visualize that is already transforming your physiology, right? And then when you've done that, I invite the mind to rest in the heart. So when you get up to the head area, just invite your active mind, the one that's spinning off all these thoughts of fear and depression, to just rest in your heart. Doesn't need to do anything, just rest and be, and allow it to take in that warmth in the heart. And it's like, that again is helping the relaxation response. And then in that place, as it's relaxing, invite your mind to think of someone you dearly love. They could be alive or past, but sometime in your life who you just felt so grateful for, or delighted in. It could be a pet, right? An old dog that you just loved, or a cat. For me, that cat works. And then you just imagine being with that being. And how much do you love them, and how grateful you are for having had them in your life, or having them now in your life. And that's automatically raising your frequency. Your energy is responding to that, and you start to feel better and more hopeful. And then you breathe it through the rest of your body, so through your whole field, all the way out to your skin, and then you can breathe it even further to spill over into the space around you. And now you're in this incredibly high frequency of love and gratitude. And your brain says, oh, okay, we're doing this now. And so it responds physiologically. It now changes the neurotransmitters in that moment to match the emotional state. And so you come out of that sort of, your eyes are a little moistened, you have a little smile on your face. It's like a little vacation from the misery. It only takes like 5 minutes, right? So if anyone's interested in learning the heart math version, the organization is called Heart Math, like heart.
That's
like
right here. That's in Santa Cruz, man. That's in Santa Cruz, California.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes,
and they have a
course.
website worth going to, and they teach this for free. They teach this meditation of this heart meditation, and they have videos for you to follow along if you want. So I highly recommend if anyone's wanting to learn that. And I'll be doing my own version of the meditation. It's not on my website yet, but I will be producing one, and I will be doing a whole blog post about this as well.
That's so cool because I've driven by the heart math sign like a million times. I always wonder, what is that heart math place? And
That's it.
randomly you're talking about it, so
There you
that's really
go.
cool. Well, let me ask you this though, because like the gratitude thing, like I've read something about the science of gratitude, right, and like how important that is to health and longevity and all that. That's very true, so far as I can ascertain. But I have to ask about people who are like have like chronic illness, like cancer or something like that. Maybe they have a terminal, prognosis or whatever. Like, I think people like that might have a hard time feeling any kind of gratitude whatsoever, or somebody who like maybe their child died or something like that, right? Which is like a horrible, horrible thing, like when you're like that down, like it's really hard to like feel grateful for anything. So, or is it? I don't know. What do you say to that?
I say it sounds like it could be hard, and I'm not trying to be false, toxic positivity. This is actually has actual effects. Maybe they don't want to feel better. That's that sometimes people want to stay in their grief. In a way, they feel that honors the person they've lost and that sort of thing, instead of celebrating that person. I mean, if you've lost a child, wouldn't you like even a 5-minute vacation from the grief? It's not saying you're not honoring the loss and that sort of thing, but you can take a moment from dwelling on it, because it's the dwelling on it that increases the sense of grief and makes it worse. So you can honor the loss, and certainly right away, if it's fresh, you do what feels natural. But if it's years since that has happened, some of the physical symptoms they're experiencing may be directly a result of that trauma, that loss, and that they just don't know how to deal with grief. They don't know how to deal with the loss and that sort of thing. And there are things you can do to work with it and to come to a place of healing. And when you finally do get to that point, the natural evolution of grief, if you let it, if you're fighting grief and just blocking it because it's too scary, the only way to deal with emotions is to experience them. And if it's way too scary to experience on your own, then get help. Get a therapist or somebody or a healer who can hold that space, for a safe space for you to just let it out. Because a lot of people, maybe, especially for men, I think, things like grief, they're not really there are cultural expectations that men don't cry, right? Boys don't cry. And that's what's needed. I mean, that's the natural emotional
They'd rather
response
just kill
to
somebody.
grief.
Come on, that's
Yeah.
it.
Or get angry. Well, that's what happens. They're comfortable with anger because that's a powerful manly
Right.
thing, anger.
Yes.
But grief, how do you deal with grief? It's so internal, and it can cause heart attacks and things like that if you don't deal with it, right? So heart problems, and it means your heart's not available to you to love somebody new. So it's or yourself, and so the give yourself some respite, and ideally being able to experience the grief, it'll naturally go through waves and cycles. It doesn't end in a minute. It's not going to happen in 5 minutes. Grief is something that can take years to overcome, but that doesn't mean you have to stop living. And the thing is, when you're able to allow the emotions to flow through you like a wave, and you could just do it in your bedroom, close the door. You don't have to do it in public. I wouldn't recommend it, but you want to be in a place where you feel safe. Then just allow it to flow. And if you have to hit something, hit a pillow. And but that all is helpful, and because that allows the emotion to flow. And to resolve itself. It's designed to resolve itself, and it's designed to be felt. And grief is a really heavy one, and I've experienced it myself. And when I lost my parents, they were in their 90s. It's not like it was a sudden disaster. Their time ran out, and I was caregiving and that sort of things. But so there was a lot of connection and a sudden loss of something really important. And all my childhood stuff came up as well, right? So it's not just grief; it's also anger sometimes for that the loved one, or that they even left. So a lot of mixed, complicated emotions come up during grief, and the best way to process it and to heal it is to allow yourself to feel what's going on, and then it gently, slowly does shift. And then you'll find like anyone who's had like a crying session, just because they go overwhelmed with emotion, they just burst into tears, male or female, it feels cleansing afterwards. It's like they feel this, okay, I can get rid of that out of the field. We've processed that. Another wave will come later. It may not, and the more you're able to do this, the more later it is. So the next wave won't happen immediately. It'll happen maybe a month from now. So the more you're able to be with it and process it that way, the more is resolved. And the final stage is one of deep appreciation for the person who left. Now you're able to remember the good times. Now you're able to remember the joy they gave you. And even if you were angry at them at the time, that dissipates. So there's this, and it's replaced by a sort of forgiveness. And the way through is through feeling it. And that can be speeded up with the help of an energy practitioner and that sort of thing. But just accept the fact it's going to recur on their birthday, right? It's going to recur on any important things that remind you of them. So that's just the way it is. That's how our mind it responds to triggers. Oh, that was his favorite cake, and that sort of thing. But if you're able to learn how to process it like that, and it's not hard, it's your natural inclination is to process, is to feel it, to emote. And it's only when we fight it and think we're supposed to be strong and that sort of thing, that it causes problems. And so just being, so in terms of your health and that sort of thing, this is one of the ways you can heal yourself. It may not, depending on the problem. Cancer, for example, is one of those diseases that really can be a result of long-held resentment.
Right. Well, cancer's a bitch, as they say.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. Okay, so you said you're an energy healer. So what is an energy healer? Is that like Reiki, and what exactly do you heal?
Well, there are many different types of energy healers. And what I work with is the energy of consciousness, the emotions, the physical, sensations that are really kind of like messages, your gut feelings and that sort of thing. That's part of your energy. So I work with the thought, the mental body, the thoughts, and also ultimately the beliefs that got imprinted in childhood through what our parents taught us, how they behaved, not just what they said, but how they behaved and how that impacted us and what we concluded about ourselves at that little young age that are not necessarily true. I tell a story. I can give you an example of how energy healing works, at least how I do it. And let's tell a story of somebody. Let's say his name is Timmy, age 5, and his parents are going through marital difficulties, but he doesn't really know that. All he knows is that there's sort of a stressful atmosphere at home. And his mother is really upset at his father for something his father did. Maybe he's having an affair, who knows, or she suspects it. But she's in a bad mood. And little Timmy, she tells him, clean up your room. He's 5. He starts to clean up his room, but, it's full of toys. So, of course, he's going to get distracted, right, and start playing, sort of thing. And then she comes back. And also the fact that there's this tension in the house, he's going to want some sort of escape. Right, that's what we tend to do. And play is, for a little child, is their escape as well, right? So it's natural for him to be distracted because life is hard in that environment. So anyway, she comes back in a few minutes and he hasn't done his room, and she blows up at him and fuming, punishes him. And he's just 5. He doesn't know what to do. And so then that night, his father comes home and they have the huge blowout fight to end all blowout fights. And they decide his father storms out and moves to a hotel or whatever. And the mother is crying, but also angry. And she takes it out on little Timmy and tells it his fault. If he hadn't cleaned up his room, she wouldn't have been so mad. And, all of that sort of stuff. And he takes it in as true. But what does he do? He's not equipped to deal with that. He as a 5-year-old, this is overwhelming and it's scary. And then when his parents decide to divorce, now he has to choose between one parent or the other. He loves them both, Now he's in a state where he can't, he's being asked to make an impossible decision before he's mentally capable of it, right? At that young age, it's impossible. So very wisely, he decides to disconnect from the whole experience, and he won't, like in our conversations, if somebody raises a subject you don't want to discuss, you'll say, oh, let's not go there. Well, literally in our energy won't go wherever we're holding that difficult pattern. And in his case, it's a mental impasse where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you pick this parent, you miss that one. If you pick that parent, you miss that one. And he can't make that decision. So what happens, wherever you hold that disturbance, that emotional and mental and belief thing, you're going to divert your energy, your consciousness away from wherever you're holding that emotional wound. And in his case, it's his heart. And so when you move your energy away from something, you forget it. It's like you develop amnesia. And so it goes into the unconscious. And it still affects you, but you're not conscious of it. And so it's going to affect your belief about yourself. And let's say he believed it was his fault that his parents broke up, and he's devastated by that, and in grief, remorse, but also guilt, which is a really heavy emotion. So he's holding all this in his little 5-year-old body and energy and mind, and shuts it off because it's too scary. And he just didn't know what to do. Fast forward to little Timmy's now 50, and he's getting heart problems. And he's also really neat now. He actually keeps a very neat desk and that sort of thing, but that's the kind of thing that will make somebody suddenly, if I'd only cleaned my room, like that kind of thing. And then he becomes obsessive because something bad will happen if I don't keep my place neat and tidy, right? So that's the kind of programming a little 5-year-old will think. And so, but he doesn't know about it because it's unconscious now. It's gone. All he knows is, this world and his job and that sort of thing. And he's having trouble in relationship himself. And partly because his heart is being bypassed. So, and you need that to have a healthy relationship. You need to be in your heart. So anyway, he gets physical symptoms, and he goes to see his doctor, and they're proposing open heart surgery. Maybe he's going to have a bypass or something like that. And oh man, and he's really doesn't want to go that route, and so he's hurt. Maybe as somebody who's into holistic healing, they said, well, you could try energy healing. It might help. Mitigate it. And so he goes in and sees an energy healer, let's say me. And so the first thing we do is one of the things that I see people's energy fields there, when I attune to the energy world, I can see patterns in there that are represented by whatever physical symptom it is. And so there's this great big dark red area over the or blackish area over the heart, and this is like an X on a treasure map that says dig here for buried treasure, because there's a piece of him behind that. And so what I do I would do for Timmy is that I would first of all get his story, and he probably doesn't even remember that because it's gone unconscious, and he's really focused on the physical because that's what's happening now. So what I do is I charge it up energetically. So I can do that by charging my own field, and my own field is higher frequency and more energy in it. And it's like water. Water flows from a higher ground to lower ground. So energy does the same. It flows from a higher potential, like a voltage, higher potential to a lower potential. So somebody who's sick, their energy's low. And they can feel it themselves. They're depleted. They don't have the energy to do the things they used to be able to do. That's a sign that your energy's low. So what I'm doing now is charging up that area in the heart area. And as the energy flows to that, the memory that was suppressed starts coming to his conscious awareness. And he says, oh, I'm suddenly remembering something that happened in childhood. And so as I continue to charge it, he's able to then see it with his adult mind, who has some life experience now, and sees this whole story unfolding of himself as a 5-year-old and how it felt. And he's feeling it in the moment, right? As all those emotions are coming to the surface now. He's feeling it. And then he says, I thought it was my fault. Oh, of course it wasn't. I was only 5. What did I know? And then this wave, first the wave that comes is one of compassion for his little 5-year-old self, right? Oh my God, I thought I was the one who made that all happen. That wasn't true. Of course not. And suddenly the energy is beginning to flow because it's not scary to visit it anymore, because now he sees the truth. Oh, it wasn't my fault. And then as the healer, I can then lift the old pattern, which I can see energetically, from his field with his permission. I say, do you want to keep that, or are you willing and ready to let this one go now? And he says, yeah, let's remove it so I can have my heart again. So I lift it from the field, clear it, and then repair the damage to the field so that it's now able to flow properly. And then the body naturally takes over. It knows how to heal itself. And so then the body starts to heal the heart. And he's able to avoid, in his case, open heart surgery. So, and he starts finding it easier in his relationships because now he's able to feel again. His heart is open.
So how do you repair the damage to the field?
Well, the field is, I don't really want to get into energy anatomy, but the energy field has like a template for the body. So, well, you've heard of acupuncture and acupuncture
Yes.
meridians.
Yes.
They're sort of a grid-like structure of energy lines. And so, but that exists on multiple levels of our consciousness. So those energy lines exist. The first level of the field is probably analogous to the acupuncture lines. It's like a blue grid, looks like Spider-Man. And it's only maybe a ½ inch away from your skin. And that's kind of where you feel things like tingles and stuff like that in that part of the field. And then there's the emotional body, which is more amorphous. It's more like colorful clouds represent. So oddly, the color of those clouds is similar to what we say in our language. I feel blue. So like a dark, murky blue would be sadness, for example. And that's what it shows up as, or red with rage. Gosh, doesn't anger look red? And it's a murky red, but nevertheless, and he's a fear. He's a yellow coward, odd that our language uses the very colors of what those emotions look like, as they're like moving clouds of that color. So I can actually scoop out the darker ones with the permission of the client, because without their permission, they just keep regenerating it. So they have to want to, okay, let's clean that up. And I can also, if it ended up with weakening the field, so what happens over time when you have a block is that the energy isn't flowing to the area as it should. And that causes the cells to divide less frequently. And so the tissues that made up of those cells become weaker and more susceptible to illness or injury. And so they're not as resilient as a healthy tissue. And so that's why it takes a long time, but it does eventually show up in the physical body. If you have a block like Timmy had, it does eventually affect the heart, the muscle of the heart, and that sort of thing. So I can actually, I work at both the levels, at the grid levels, and also with the fluid levels, the emotions, and then there's a level that's like the thought body, the mental body, which is like yellow lines, yellow Spider-Man lines. And so wherever there's those get thinner, and so I strengthen them and restore them to the ideal brightness and that sort of thing. And so it's an alternation of structured and unstructured. So the emotional stuff, and also the subtle stuff that we have in relations, that there's stuff that people don't say, but you can sense it from that stuff we pick up also emotionally through our field. But it's a higher level of the field that allows us to do that. So I'm not going to go into, I hope that answers your question, that basically there's also an overall what people would call your aura, but the aura is actually all of this combined. But it's like a golden cocoon that goes around the whole field. It's like your protective shield. And sometimes that can get disturbed or torn and through various experiences. So those are the kinds of things I'm actually doing work to actually rebuild them and reconnect but I had to learn how to use my own energy and to focus it so it's thread-like when I'm working on the grids, and more just cupping it when I'm working on the fluid levels.
Well, that went right over my head. It's like when
Yeah,
I
can see your eyes glazing.
not glazing, but like, it went over my head. Like I talked to my acupuncturist, and she's Chinese from China, and she gave me these like herbs, right? To tea, right? And I'm going like, oh, that's very interesting. Like, how does that work? She goes, you wouldn't understand. I'm going like, what do you mean I wouldn't understand? She goes, it's not about like molecules and atoms and like, like all that. Because it's about energy, really. Like you just wouldn't understand. And like I'm having that same feeling right now. Like, I just don't understand. But let me ask you this: there's a thing right here that I've heard all my life. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. That's the first law of thermodynamics right there. You are an engineer, so you probably know something about this. What's your opinion? Is that true? Energy cannot be created or destroyed? Because if so, where does it come from?
And it's just transforms. That's the second part of that equation. It just changes form.
So where did the energy come from? Where did the energy come from? Is a lot of energy out there in the universe, stars full of energy? Where did it all come from? Then if it can't be created,
think of it this way: it's more than the physical, and when we're talking about human energy, it's consciousness. Where does consciousness come from? And it's not the brain. It's not the brain. The brain comes from our spirit. It comes from a larger part of us that is more than physical, exists on multiple dimensions. Now, this is also probably too much information. Sorry, and you don't have to hear it. But I had to learn all this, right? I was totally weird. That's too weird. But through learning it and studying it, experiencing it, and also actually as an engineer, it makes total sense. For example, one of the basic laws in engineering is that when you have a conductor and you apply electricity to it, so electricity is a form of energy, and you can't see that either, right? So you apply electricity, so let's say it's a copper rod, that will generate an electromagnetic field.
Right.
An energy field. So think about this. All of our nerves are conductors. They're conducting electrical impulses from our senses, from our eyes, our ears, our skin, along a conductor. So from an engineering standpoint, okay, electricity flowing through a conductor generates an electromagnetic field. So that nerve must have an electromagnetic field around it. And our cells are generating electricity through their mitochondria, right? And that's flowing. And we're full of water, which is conductive, right? So we've got our whole body is basically a conductor. That's how we can get electrocuted. And if lightning strikes us, we conduct that. So our whole body, and it's moving all the time, right? So think of all the multiple nerves and other electrical things are going on in the brain, that sort of thing. They're all moving. So they're moving. Electricity is moving through a conductor, our whole body, all the nerves, and not only that, but the blood vessels. And we have to be generating electromagnetic field, and those fields are additive. So we have now every organ, every nerve, all of that is actually generating a little electromagnetic field, and those fields add up. And if you add them all up around the body, you've got to have a big electromagnetic field around your body. And the earth has a big electromagnetic field around it as well, right? So this is the next engineering law, is that when you move a conductor, this wire, through an electromagnetic field, it generates current in the conductor. So that's how motors work, right? You're spinning the magnet with wire wrapped around it in in an electrical field, what's it? And it generates a current through the conductor. So our body works like the same way as a motor in that sense. And so here you go. You walk on the Earth, which has a vast electromagnetic field, and that's scientifically proven to have one. This is not just theory. It's not woo and fluff. This is scientific, and it's been measured. You, as a conductor yourself, are walking on Earth. Through a vast electromagnetic field, it's going to generate energy in you. So it's and plus, energy follows thought. So this is where consciousness comes in. So you can actually direct energy using your thoughts, like you do in your dreams. Like when you're imagining you're being chased in a dream. That's imagination. It's not actually happening when you're asleep, but your body's still responding to it. So you're actually generating energy in your body, and you're triggering the brain to release certain hormones and brain chemicals. So there is a scientific connection between our energy consciousness. It's not just thought. It's not just a dream. It actually has a physical effect, and that's why you can do energy healing. Is that I use thought to direct my energy so that I can charge my hands and use them to charge a portion of a person's field and do various repairs. So it's a bit different from Reiki, where you're not actually doing that kind of intense work and highly focused work. In Reiki, it's more general, basically transmitting of a frequency to and in certain areas, charging up in certain areas. But that kind of level of intricate work, it's like both are good, but they're used differently.
Well, I have a feeling that that eventually the science will be able to explain basically all of this. I think.
Well, and they're doing experiments.
They're doing it all the time, right? I mean, like they're closing in on it all the time, and it's hundreds of years away from ever actually being fully known, if it can ever be known. But I think that there's a certain order.
I beg to differ. It's amazing, amazing breakthroughs are happening now. And actually, on my website, I have a list of scientific websites that are doing this research. So for anyone who is scientifically inclined and wants to know more, I definitely urge you to follow those. And HeartMath is one of them. But there are others.
HeartMath. I'll have to go up there because it's like, I don't know, 30 miles from my house or whatever. So I'll have to go by maybe 20 miles. I'll have to go by and take a look. And your website is energyisreal.com, and there's also a book called Energy is Real that you wrote as well. Okay.
Yes.
And so, I get the feeling like we barely scratched the surface. I think we could probably talk for years about this, and I'm sure you have. And I think that people who are watching this are probably going to be pretty curious to learn more. So, like, how does this work? Like, if somebody because you mentioned you have a practice and you're an energy healer. Do you only work where you are physically live? Do you travel? Do you give talks?
No.
Or does it telephonically, as the president would say? Or how does all that work?
Well, the cool thing is that energy is not limited by time and space. And so I see clients all over the world. I have clients in England. We do it by phone, by Zoom, actually. And because I'm still using visualization, and I can actually imagine them in the room with me, and then I'm actually focusing. So because I'm directing it in my imagination, it's actually affecting them. And they get it. They feel the difference. At the end of the call, they're totally shifted in state. And they come back because they think they have something else they want me to look at. So I have clients in other countries, as well as those who live locally that can come for a physical session. So they can come and have a session in person. And so, and I'm located in Vancouver, Canada.
Right.
So,
okay. All right. Vancouver, very lovely place. Very lovely place. Okay. So people want to get hold of you. They should just go to energyisreal.com and
yes, they can. There's a contact
calendar link.
I don't have a calendar link, but there's a phone number, and there's also a contact us form. If they want to email, they can do that. And then I can respond to them. And in the meantime, they can also get the book if they want. One of the things I offer on my website is a one-chapter preview of the book.
24-page book preview. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it's got the entire first chapter, which has 6 exercises in it for how to develop your energy awareness. And in the free resources tab, I think it's under explore and then select free resources or something, or maybe I don't have it memorized, but there are 6 audio recordings, one for each of those sensing exercises. So that's a good place for them to start, just to say, well, so let's learn more about this energy thing. Can I sense stuff? And some of those exercises you can do with a partner, right? So, or with kids. And that can be a lot of fun. Kids love doing this sort of thing. So,
all right, that is super cool. Well, I want to thank you so much, Gail, for being here on 60 Plus Uncensored. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but this has been very eye-opening, mind-opening, mind-expanding, and I really have enjoyed having you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Me too. I've had a lot of fun speaking about my favorite subject and interacting with your questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Gail, so much, and I will catch you on the flip side. That's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Gail Behrend for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you like this episode, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. Oh, and by the way, if you know someone over 60 who's still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with a purpose, or just aging on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation at 60 Plus Living on Facebook. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored. Because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.